may be something in me that I don't see myself that wants to live up to my martial forebears. I think that's quite likely. But it doesn't take the form of talking out of the side of my mouth and saying, "You're looking at me." I'm not like that, as you know.
Besides being your wife, who is Carol Blue?
Well, what else does she need to be? She's a young lady from California, fourth or fifth generation Californian, I think. Was at the University of California in Berkeley. Worked for the Los Angeles Times for a while. Did some work in the screenwriting business in Los Angeles. Probably hasn't ever quite forgiven me for making her move to Washington, D.C.
And where did you meet?
In Los Angeles during a book tour of mine.
And she's
in '89.
And second wife?
Yes.
Who was your first wife?
My first wife was a lady, I suppose still is, I can't say was. You can't, if you've had children with somebody, you can't really get divorced from them, in my opinion. Is a lady called Eleni Meliagru, a Greek from Cyprus, who I met during the time I was preparing to write my book on Cyprus in the 70s. I still lived in England at that point. And we were married in, must have been 1981. And lived in Washington for many years. We have 2 children born here, Alexander and Sophia. They have now, since then, moved back to London.
And you have 3 children altogether?
And Carol and I have a daughter called Antonia.
And how old are your 3 children?
Alexander is 23. Sophia and Antonia will both this month be respectively 18 and 14.
Why is Cyprus important?
So I have 2 teenage daughters.
Are you close?
Ask them. Yeah, I don't think they know how much I care about them. And that may be partly my fault, because if you're a self-employed writer, there's a tendency always to feel guilty any time you're not working, because you never quite know when you've stopped, because you don't have office hours or an employer or anything like that. And I know that sometimes I must seem a bit distracted to them for this reason. And I'm sure I'll regret it. I already do in some ways.
What are your strengths?
But they won't be watching this, so I can safely say that they ought to know. They probably do know how strongly I feel for them.
What are your strengths as a parent?
Well, I can cover the bills, I think, and I can. I'm not bad with the friends they make or bring around. I think they don't think, "Oh Christ, I can't bring so-and-so home because, you know, Daddy would be so embarrassing." I have a feeling that bit's all right, which I think is important. I can sometimes make them laugh. I can sometimes help with homework, as long as it's nothing to do with math or science. I can do that, and enjoy doing it. And when they needed it, which they've long since ceased to, you think I was quite a good reader aloud as well.
This is your book on Cyprus, Hostage to History, Cyprus from the Ottomans to Kissinger. Why is Cyprus important?
Well, it's important to me because it's a small republic, well under 1 million inhabitants, a peaceful, democratic population, with no chance of ever threatening anybody else, and no ambition to do so. Just at the eastern end of the Mediterranean, guarding the approaches to the Suez Canal, roughly, and the coast of Israel, Syria, Lebanon, and just under the great stomach of Turkey. Though its inhabitants are majority Greek, Greece is quite a long way away. It's never been politically part of Greece. It's always been used as a kind of cockpit and colony by other countries, and finally managed to break away after centuries of being ruled colonially by either Turkey or Britain. Please excuse me. And had that period of independence very cruelly cut off by 2 military actions, both of them, I'm sorry to say, supported by the United States. One, a military coup sponsored by Greece, and second, 2 military invasions sponsored by Turkey, which have led to a terrible refugee crisis, to the partition of the country, artificially, to the displacement of a lot of refugees. And I thought it was just a disgrace that Europe couldn't do better by one of its smallest member states. And so I wrote a book saying I thought this was an injustice that should be reversed. And I've done a lot of speaking and writing about it.
Next call for Christopher Hitchens, Las Vegas.
Good morning, Mr. Hitchens. I'm calling to ask about your opinion of President Bush and whether or not he is delusional in his belief in God. I'd like to read a quote from Bob Woodward's book, Plan Attack, page 379, where George Bush is discussing his feelings on the day he ordered the invasion of Iraq. And I quote, "Going into this period, I was praying for strength to do the Lord's will. I'm surely not going to justify war based upon God. Understand that. Nevertheless, in my case, I pray that I be as good a messenger of His will as possible." End quote. Is the President delusional as Commander-in-Chief in his decisions or not?
Thank you.
You wouldn't be able to prove it by that. What he's actually saying there is very modest. That's what I understand the Methodist position to be. You get to a certain stage, you can't do any more. You refer the matter upward, if you like. You say it's in God's hands now. I think it's a pathetic position to hold, but it's not a fanatical one. It's certainly not like those who have in history said, you know, we are doing God's work, God is on our side. Deo Vindice is the motto of the Confederacy, for example. Or Gott mit uns, as it's said on the belt buckles of German soldiers. They thought God was on their side. Bush isn't invoking the Lord in that way. He has, to take up your challenge about being delusional, deluded himself because of his simple-minded Christianity on several other occasions, though. The most notable would be his first meeting with that KGB goon and thug Vladimir Putin, where you may recall the president said, well, I looked into his eyes and I saw he was wearing his grandmother's crucifix, and I thought, what a great man this must be, and what a friend I've got in this fellow. Now, I think the president must regret saying that by now, knowing all that we know, and much of what we knew then about Vladimir Putin. And I'd like to know something, by the way. Someone might want to look into this. Has Vladimir Putin been seen wearing that crucifix ever again since? Or had he ever been seen wearing it before? Or did his advisors tell him that the President of the United States is such a sucker and such a sap that that would do the trick? In which case, we have a right to reconsider the idea that having a president who's a person of faith is a good thing.
Have you met President Bush?
No, I haven't.
Vice President Cheney?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
What was that meeting like?
It was an off-the-record meeting, and Mr. Cheney's manner is sort of an off-the-record one anyway, but it was a discussion with a few involved and interested writers and reporters about the balance sheet of Iraq as it then stood. This is the summer before last.
Did you
fairly sobering event, actually.
Did you leave there impressed? What were your feelings when you left?
He gave a very quick executive summary of how he saw the situation, which I thought was extremely well delivered, I have to say. And I think I already used the word sobering. I mean, the news was not in general good, but and there was no attempt to make it seem any better.
Would you consider Paul Wolfowitz a friend of yours?
Yeah, I would.
Why?
Well, we've been through a certain amount together, but we've also talked about things that are not just political. But I think of him as a very intelligent and very thoughtful person, and we've had some discussions that will always stay with me at very important moments. And because I've had to defend him, this is perhaps a horrible way to become somebody's friend, but it is what friends are for. I've had to defend him a lot from what I consider to be a campaign of, two campaigns of the most hysterical defamation. One about the real role he played in the liberation of Iraq, and second, his conduct, which I thought was fairly exemplary at the World Bank. I'm also a friend of Shaha Ali-Riza, his companion. I've known her separately since she was at the National Endowment for Democracy. I knew her before I met him. I think she's an absolutely admirable woman and was treated in the most scandalous way earlier this year.
Another call from Las Vegas for Christopher Hitchens.
Hi, good afternoon. Am I on the air?
Not anymore. We were going to move on. Like I said before, the Book TV school bus or the big Book TV bus has traveled the country going to bookstores and book fairs. We asked people if they had a question for you.